I'm Natalia Bonner. Welcome back. All right, I am super excited today because I get to share how to machine quilt this adorable border using some of my very favorite products. So we're going to be using the Sway 5 machine quilting ruler. You know I love the Sway rulers. I'm also going to be using the Sway 3 machine quilting ruler. I'm going to be doing a little bit of marking, so of course I'm going to be using the blue Mark Be Gone marker. Now I'm going to be quilting here today on my Gamel 22-inch machine, but you can join along and quilt on any machine. This is what I work on, but you can really do this if you're on a sit-down machine, if you're on any long arm machine. Just make sure that when you're doing ruler quilting that you do have a ruler foot on your machine as well as a base plate. You want to make sure you have a large flat working surface at the bottom. So today I'm going to actually be quilting this fun border on this awesome quilt right here. So this is actually my class sample for my brand new free class that starts in September called the 9 Patchalong 5.0. What is the 9 Patchalong? So every year in September I host this awesome free class. And in this class, I teach you how to machine quilt 9 patch quilt blocks using machine quilting rulers. So it's a really fun way to connect with other quilters, but also enhance your machine quilting skills. So hop over to our website, peaceandquilt.com to enroll. But for now, let's get stitching. I'll begin my quilting by first loading my quilt onto my long arm machine. Obviously, if you're working on a sit-down machine or a domestic machine, you'll want to go ahead and baste everything first. For basting, I like to run a long stitch along the top of my quilt. Here I'm actually working with a panel, so you can see it does have an edge along the outside. I'll also run that basting stitch along the sides as far down as my throat space will allow. Then I have started out the actual body of my quilt by stitching in the ditch as far down along the outside of my 9 patch blocks as my throat space will allow, and then also across the top. From there, I'm ready to begin stitching. I am going to be doing a combination of some curved lines, some feathers, and some straight line quilting. So I'll start out using the Sway 5 machine quilting ruler. I'm going to use the reference points that these 9 patch blocks are giving me. So I'll hold my Sway 5 machine quilting ruler so that the sides of the ruler are 1/4 of an inch away from the points that are created by my 9 patch blocks. I'll stitch around the curve on the Sway 5 machine quilting ruler across the 3 blocks. Then when I get to my sashing section, you'll notice I'm going to switch to my Sway 3 machine quilting ruler, and I'm just going to stitch a small curve. So I'm working with what my blocks are giving me. I'll repeat this process working all the way across the top. Now I will not actually start on the border on the right side of the quilt until I have quilted all of the 9 patch blocks across my first pass and also my sashing, because I like to work across my quilts from top to bottom, left to right. I will then cut my threads. I've got the foundation of my design all created. So now I'll travel back over to the left side of the quilt. So next I'm going to grab my blue Mark Be Gone marker, and I'm actually using this long straight ruler from the Quilted Pineapple to do a little bit more marking. You could use any ruler, but what I'm doing is finding the center of each of those little tiny scallops, and I'm just marking that center point. Once I have that center point, now it's time to begin quilting. The fun part, in these tiny little scallops, I am going to be machine quilting some tiny little feathers. So I'll start out at that center point and stitch 1 teardrop feather. Then from there, I'll build bump back feathers across the side of that. I'll repeat the same process on the opposite side. Once I've completed that, then I'll travel along my ditch. So I will travel over my original stitch line, but I love to use the So Fine thread. I have found that when I use the So Fine thread, I don't get like a lot of thread buildup, that thick thread look. So I'm okay occasionally stitching over my original stitch lines. I'm going to repeat this process, filling in each of these tiny little scallops with those fun little feathers. So with this design on your quilt, if you want to quilt the exact same border, you can, or you can change it up just a little bit. If you wanted something a little bit more simplistic, you could leave the scallop just as it is and have it really simple. Or you can add in these feather fills. Or you can start to dress it up by adding even more lines. And a lot of times I actually approach borders this way. I'll start out and have one design in mind and then just keep adding and it turns into something different. So make these your own and have fun. So once I had that scallop completed, I decided I wanted to add a little bit more to my outside border. I'm crazy, so I'm always doing crazy things. But on the Sway machine quilting rulers, there are a few different lines marked on there. Some of those lines are 45-degree angle lines. So around the outside of each of those scallops, I am now using that 45-degree marked line on the Sway 5 machine quilting ruler, lining that line up on my ditch between my 9 patch blocks and marking 45-degree angle lines. So I'm not measuring. I do not know exactly what that distance is from the block to the point on these triangles. I am just using the markings, lining them up, marking a 45-degree angle, and repeating that process. So next, I'm going to use that straight side on my Sway 5 machine quilting ruler and stitch right along those lines that I've marked out. Always remember when you're using machine quilting rulers to apply gentle pressure, as well as hold your ruler 1/4 of an inch away from where you want your thread to intersect. So I'm not holding my ruler on top of the line that I've marked. I'm holding my ruler 1/4 of an inch away from that line so that my stitching can go right on top of that line. And then because I love heavy quilting and I love just adding a lot of extra interest, now I'm going to fill in the outside of these triangles that I've created. This time I'm using the Sway 3 machine quilting ruler, but you could use any of our machine quilting rulers to stitch out these straight lines. To create a little bit of interest with these lines, I am alternating the spacing. So first line is going to be 1/4 inch apart and then 1/2 inch spacing. To achieve that, I'll use the side of this Sway 3 machine quilting ruler. To achieve the 1/4 inch spacing, I'll line the side of the ruler up right on top of my previous stitch line and stitch my line. To get the 1/2 inch spacing, then I'll lay the first marked line, which says 1/2 inch on it, on top of my previous stitch line, and then simply glide the ruler along my foot. So I'll repeat that process back and forth between 1/2 inch spacing, 1/4 inch spacing. You can really start to see the possibilities with these awesome Sway rulers are endless. So I'll repeat this process working all the way up to the corner. At the corner, I want to create a miter. I like the look that a miter can create with your stitching. So I'll mark the 45-degree angle through my corner. You'll notice here that this panel is not completely square. So once I'm done with this stitch along, I will actually square it up before I bind it. But for now, I'm still going to quilt all the way to the outside edge. And from there, I'll simply turn my corner and repeat this same process, working all the way across the top of the quilt. Then, like I mentioned early on, I will quilt each of the blocks through this 9 Patchalong 5.0 on the first row. At that point, I'll quilt the side border, so that right side. Then I'll advance my quilt. I'm ready to start the next 3 blocks. At that point, once I've advanced, I will first start by quilting the border on the left side of the quilt. Then I'll quilt the 3 blocks through the center and the sashing before quilting that border over on the right side of the quilt. And I'll repeat that process until I've worked all the way down to the bottom. I hope you all found a bit of inspiration from this awesome border. I am so dang excited for the 9 Patchalong 5.0.